All right, so in the last lecture, we were successfully able to register a new user with our Firebase authentication. And we saw that the user got created in the Firebase authentication system, which is right here. You can see the new user is Adam Sharp. Now what we want to do is we want to actually authenticate the user. So you can see on the right-hand side in the emulator, this is our login screen. It has an email and password field and a login button. But currently we don't really have any view model behind this particular screen, which is controlling the functionality of the login screen. So just like the register view model, we're going to go ahead and add a new file, and this time it will be for the login. So login view model.dart. Now we can go ahead and create our login view model. So login view model. Once again, this is going to extend the change notifier so that we can send in some changes if there are any changes. So make sure that the material.dart is imported at the top. Next thing, we're going to go ahead and say message equals to nothing. So basically, we're just initializing the message variable to be empty string. Next, we're going to go ahead and create a login function. And this login function is going to take in the email, and it is going to also take in the password. These are the two things we actually need to authenticate a user. The good news is that there is already an easy function that you can call on the Firebase auth, which is called Firebase auth.instance dot sign in with email and password. Very, very descriptive name. I like the name, sign in with email and password. I can go ahead and pass in the email, and I can go ahead and pass in the password. Now, if you hover on this function, this is going to return you future of user credential object. So once again, if I want to evaluate it, I will have to mark this function as async, and then I can go ahead and wait for that future to be resolved. And I'm going to do that inside the try-catch handler or try-catch block. So let's go ahead and move this code. And it's you can see it's very, very similar to the registration phase. In the registration, we also had is registered. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a Boolean variable, and I'm just going to call it is logged in, and I will go ahead and assign it false. Once I get that value, I can simply go ahead and get the user credential. We're not really going to do anything with user credential. We're just going to set the property is logged in if the user credential is actually not equal to null. Great. Now this can throw an exception. The exception can happen if your email and password is not matching. So in those cases, we can go ahead and catch an exception on Firebase auth exception. And we're going to go ahead and catch. If you hover on Firebase auth exception, you can actually scroll down a little bit to see that it's a generic kind of an exception, which will give you e.code. And that code will be depending on whatever. I mean, it may say the service is down. It may say that the user name is not found or password is not found or something like that. Whatever the code is, whatever the message is, we're just simply going to go ahead and assign it to the message. And over here, we will also notify the listeners so that the user interface can be refreshed. Now, finally, we're going to get the generic kind of an exception. So if it is not a Firebase authentication exception, then we will simply go ahead and get the exception, and we can simply print it out, or you can do whatever you want over here, like some sort of a generic exception happen, and you can print it out. If you go and look into over here, you can see that we are simply printing out E, meaning the exception. And finally, we can go ahead and return is logged in. Now we can't really return anything because this particular login function is actually marked with void. So let's go ahead and change that and say that we are going to be returning future of Boolean. And the reason that we are returning a future is because this particular function is marked with async. That's why we're returning future of Boolean, which is logged in value, whether it is true or false. Let's go and format the document a little bit nicer. There we go. So this is our login view model, which can be used with our login page, which is right here. Now, one of the things that we really need to do is just like the registration page was using the view model over here from the provider, we can do the same exact thing for our login page. So if you go to the incident list page, there's a function right over here which is called navigate to the login page. And you can see that in our registration page, we were passing in the change notifier provider, and we were passing in the register view model. So we can use the same exact approach. So this means that for the login page, we can pass in the login view model so that the provider can give us access to the login view model, and our login page can get updates whenever we call change notifier. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this with change notifier provider. And inside over here, just like the registration, we have to provide the create. Create what? Well, in this case, create the login view model, create the instance of login view model. And the child basically simply means that which page you want to display. So I'm just going to display the login page. Let's go ahead and first make sure that all of these things are actually added. So we will import the login view model, and that should be good to go. All right. Now, one of the things you will notice over here is that these routes that we have defined, navigate to register page and navigate to login page, they are inside the incident list page. So all the routing that we are doing, that, hey, go to the registration page, hey, go to the login page, they are inside the incident list page. So this means that you can only call these functions from within the incident list page class. Not really a good architecture, because these two things, this one and this one, is part of a navigation. So we should be able to be on a completely different page, and I should be able to just say, hey, go to the login page. I should be, but I can't. And we will fix that in the future. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so now we have the login view model. It looks good, but our login page is not using the login view model. If you look at the login page, it's not using anything. No view model, no nothing. It's only displaying the stuff, which you can see on the right-hand side in the preview. So in the next lecture, we are going to go over how we can integrate the login view model with our login page, and we can perform authentication.